Where are you going? Lucky, come here. Where are you going? Come here, my boy. Come here. You're such a beautiful boy. He's a beautiful boy. You enjoying your walk? I think that's a yes. One thing has intrigued me, I thought that all the way through this walk, and it's about what would a day in the life be like of a guy or a family who were operating a mill like this 100 years ago. So I did some research and found out that the mills worked mostly with the owner keeping for himself a percentage of the ground flour and then selling this to the bakers. So grain producers would use the windmill as a base to grind their flour, and they would pay back the windmill owner in flour. So some olive oil mills actually still work in this way. Now the inside of, as you can see me walking down the stairs here, the inside of the windmill was a pretty hazardous place. You know, if you wore scarves and large clothing, it was dangerous as hell because it could get caught in the exposed rotating dented wheels and those cogs. You can see them lying around somewhere like that, those big round wheels. And that thing was powerful and not easy to stop rapidly. So you can imagine a few dramatic incidents may have occurred. Obviously windmills were created and built on top of hilltops because that's where all the wind was. So can you imagine, I'm trying to put myself in the mind of a farmer in those days, and you had to get your donkeys and walk all the way up from the fields below, walk all the way up to this hill and to the mill, and then grind it, speak to them, and then walk all the way down. Must have been a tough life, really tough life, subsistence level farming. What some people have done is they've actually renovated mills and they've turned them into houses, and some are on Airbnb. Here's an example in Messines, which is not far, and if you'd seen my video last week about the back roads of the Algarve, you'll know that Messines was just a little bit west of where I was, and you can go and stay there. It's brilliant. So you can check out a mill and absorb the history off yourself while you sleep the night. How cool is that? But mills aren't the only ruins in Portugal. There's lots of other ruins, lots of old villages and things like that. And I've heard people have actually, in central Portugal, buying complete villages back in the day. I think that was about 15 years ago. I knew somebody who was actually looking at buying a village for 200,000 euros. There's actually a very good example of that down on the west coast. Near Algarve, there's a place called Aldeia da Pedralva, and there's a link in the description below. But you can see that what this guy did is apparently somebody from Lisbon, and he came down and he bought this entire village, or half of the village, and he's renovated it into this beautiful hotel. And I've stayed there. We went to a wedding there, and it's amazing. But anyway, this property that you're looking at right now is pretty close to me, and it was sold, or it was on the market for 140,000 euros for this ruin and a bit of land, and it's been sold now. But it's an interesting, beautiful property, isn't it? I mean, it's stunning. I'm not sure structurally how amazing it would be, but let's sort of dive into all the details regarding buying a piece of land and ruins. Okay, so I spoke with my lawyer, and I asked her for a list of things that you need to do before you go and check out and basically do due diligence before buying a piece of land. So first thing you got to do is check the PDM. Now the PDM is a plan. It's basically the zoning plan for the whole Câmara, for the whole council, the municipality. Okay. So now if your land, you can check this on their websites, on the Câmara websites. Okay. So check the PDM. If it's inserted in the RAN, National Agricultural Reserve, or REN, National Ecological Reserve, no construction can be carried out. Okay, so it's very important to check that. Number 2, and there's 7 points here. If it's possible to build, confirm that you have access to basic infrastructure like sanitation and electricity. Third point is analyze the morphological characteristics of the terrain, since the characteristics of the terrain are of extreme importance, so that the entire construction process can occur without problems. So we're talking about like river lines, erosion issues, etc., all those kind of things, and they do play a role in your land. Now the fourth point is that consider the land area and the area that you intend to build, since the construction depends on this factor. Many times you'll be given a percentage of the land that you're allowed to build on. Okay, so they'll say like 0.02% of per hectare or whatever. The fifth point, if it's rustic land as opposed to urban land, before buying it, it'll be necessary for the owner to give the right of first purchase to all the neighbors, all the lands that are adjacent to the land, and he has to give it at the same price that you're being offered it. Okay, so bear that in mind too. The sixth point is before making any decision, Marcia, my lawyer, always advises to request for prior information from the City Council, from the Câmara Municipal, of the area where the land's located, to be sure of the possibility of construction as well as the gross construction area. So there's always, whatever I say to you in this video, just don't take it at face value. Always go and check out with the camera, and probably check a lawyer, get legal advice as well, because it's quite a tricky exercise and you can come unstuck like we're going to see now. And number 7 is cross-check all the fiscal and land registry information. Now these documents, they're called the Caderneta Predial and the Certidão de Registro Predial. So check those out and make sure that they're correct and everything and legal. Okay, so those are really good points from a lawyer. Like I said, don't take my word for it. Go and check out, go and do some due diligence with a lawyer, and make sure that you get all the documentation from the Câmara Municipal. Okay. I think what we'd like to do now is jump over to Portimão. I'm going to drive over there. Just driving over to see Reimagined. It's a couple who have moved over here to Portugal, and they make some amazing videos, and they've really been trying to establish a turismo rural, which also means like a rural tourism, like a bed and breakfast kind of thing, but in rural. So you're probably familiar with turismo rural, I don't know. Anyway, be fascinating to hear their story, because they've had a few complications with their land as well, so it's really going to be interesting to hear their story. So yeah, meet Hannah and Jack. Hey guys, well, it's so nice to meet you. It really is wonderful. And I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions about your land and the ruin that you've got on this land, because I know that you've gone through some interesting times, to say the least. When did your story start?
So our story started about 6 years ago. We had the dream of building a tourism. Sorry, you need to go.
Okay. Well, it's going to sort the outside. It's cool, I can cut it out.
You go
hey, yeah. Well, thanks for having us. Our story started about 7 years ago. We were sat in kind of thinking about what our next life move was going to be, and we decided that, hey, we don't want to be making our money with marketing all of our lives. Let's do something different. So we decided that what we really like to do is do something a bit more sustainable, something where, again, we could see ourselves having children running around, and we decided that, yeah, maybe let's get into tourism and make a turismo rural. So we started looking around Europe for a good place to start this business. We wanted somewhere close to the ocean, we wanted somewhere that had a little bit of land so we could grow our own fruits and vegetables, and we wanted somewhere that had a lot of tourists. So yeah, after looking around for a few years, about 4 years ago, we stumbled across the Algarve, and it just met all of those criteria. It's fantastic down here.
Yeah, and then we found this piece of land here, fell in love with the area, and started this whole process of purchasing the land, applying for building permits about 3 years ago, and this is where we're at now.
And the land, when you found the land, there was a ruin on it, right? Was that why you wanted to buy it? Did you want to renovate the ruin, and did that help give you more rights to the land?
Yeah, so when we were looking for a piece of land, we specifically looked for a piece of land with a ruin on it, because we'd read that this, especially if you want to build a turismo rural, it's much easier to build on it. You can extend on the ruin. You have to use the footprint of the ruin, but you can extend it. It's much easier to get a building permit for a piece of land that already has a ruin on it. That was definitely one of the main search criteria, and also why we thought this piece of land would be really good for what we wanted to do.
Sounds so easy. Buy a piece of land and then you're done. Brilliant, well done. So happily ever after, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what we thought at the start. Reading into it more, as we started to this idea could actually become a reality. It's not just something we're searching for on the internet. We started to stumble across other people's mistakes and realised that it's maybe not that easy. So there's a few key things that you need to look for when you are starting a turismo rural in Portugal. You need to make sure as well that the building that you're buying was actually a livable building. A lot of people will try and sell you a chicken shed and tell you that someone used to live there, but you need to make sure that it's got a habitation license.
Because there's a difference between an agricultural building and a residential building, right?
Exactly. Yeah. We've even heard of stories about people building a small building and knocking it down to sell it to people, that there was actually a ruin there when there wasn't. And if they go look at the maps in the town council, there is no habitation license for that building. So yeah, make sure that you're not buying a chicken shed that you think was a house beforehand. Make sure that someone actually did live there prior to 1951.
So where do you start when you see a piece of land on Idealista or whatever website you go? Then obviously you speak to the owner, you speak to the agent. But the best place to do is probably go, as you said, get a lawyer and go straight to the Cámara and actually look at the real documents, right?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see a lot from the photos. See if it was someone's actually lived there. See if you can see like electrics and things in the house. That's usually a good, clear sign. Ask the owner, and they'll tell you something. But then you need to go check that. So if you actually like the land once you've been there and visited, I'd go to the effort of going to the Cámara. You can take a lawyer or a translator, but just go and have a talk with them. They're usually quite friendly. And yeah, they'll sit down with you, they'll look at the maps and they'll say, hey, what's possible on this land if you were to buy it.
And you've jumped through all these hoops and everything, and then you came up with a final hurdle. What was that all about?
Well, yeah, I mean, we tried not to fall through all the other mistakes that I said that other people have mentioned. You know, we looked at the PDM, we saw that what was available in the area, we saw that we could build a Turismo Rural. You know, in this particular area where we found this land, what it says is that if you buy a ruin that's got a habitation license, you can build up to 1,000 square meters legally for a Turismo Rural. That's a lot, considering that the ruin was only 65 square meters and the land was under 100,000 euros a few years ago. So we went through those hoops. We made sure that we could build here. We made sure that, again, there was no fire laws. We had to make sure as well that the Wren land wasn't there. That's a big one for people. You know, you got to look at these maps and make sure it's not on any kind of like forestry land or agricultural or environmental reservation land. What you'll see is, you know, it's not just, we thought at the beginning that it was like, has it got protected species or protected plants? It's not just that. It can be areas of erosion or fire risk or these kind of things that can also denote whether it's in the Wren land. So make sure there, because they will come over the top of all the local planning laws and will restrict you further and generally mean that it's not worth the effort.
Yeah, so we did all of this. We engaged the Cámara from the very beginning, before we bought the land, after we had looked at it, to ask them, to tell them our plans, what we wanted to do and see if that's feasible. We were told yes, it would be, and decided to go for a previous request for information. It's also called a PIP, where you, even if you don't own the land yet, you can submit a building permit or a request for a building permit to the Cámara, and they will tell you whether you can build this there or not. And if you get this PIP, it's valid for 1 year afterwards, and you definitely guarantee that you can build what you want to do. So we went through this process. Due to our own mistake, we didn't completely finish it because there was just minor changes that they wanted us to make, and we were told we could do this in the next phase. And because it already taken a year to get this PIP approved, we were eager to move forward. So we didn't, that's the main mistake that we made, that we didn't finalize that PIP. So that's probably my number one tip. Make sure you get this PIP, you get it signed, completely done, and then you're pretty safe with what you can do on this land.
Yeah, I mean, we tied that to our promissory contract. So we signed a contract with the seller of the land because they were so confident that we could build a Turismo Rural here. We said, okay, well, put your money where your mouth is. We want a PIP, and we'll buy this land contingent on getting a PIP. But because the planning permission didn't take the 3 months we were expecting and told, it took 1 year, the seller was putting increasing amounts of pressure on us to sell the land. So that when the PIP came through with only minor accessibility requests, you know, we needed a new car parking space and we needed to put a ramp in the swimming pool, the architects and the Cámara just said, hey, just correct it in the next step. And to be honest, we just felt pressured to make that decision. So yeah, like Hannah says, that was our one mistake really, of not getting that signed and sealed and going that extra, 2 or 3 months to finish off that contract before moving to the next step. And that would have saved us a lot of headaches now.
Yeah, because what's happened now is because of the very bad wildfires in 2017, 2018, there is not a new regulation. It's been a rule of a governmental national law already about fire risks and fire zones, but they were differently enforced on the local level, and here in the Portimão area it wasn't really enforced, so that's why no one's ever really told us about this, why we didn't know about them. But now in 2020 they've decided to rezone a lot of the land around here according to fire risk, and this means our land is now in a zone that is very high risk of fire, and you're not allowed to build anything on this anymore. You could rebuild the ruin, but you can't extend it to 1,000 square meters for a Turismo Rural any longer. So that's what's happened to us, even though we've handed in our plans in 2019 before these rules came into effect. The Cámara is now saying that we have to adhere to those rules and we're not allowed to build on this land any longer.
It's a difficult situation, isn't it? And We've got to follow along on your YouTube channel to find out what happens next.
Yes, exactly. So we're talking to the camera, we're talking to lawyers, we're trying to resolve the situation. But at this point, we're not sure really what's going to happen next. So,
Yeah, stay tuned. I mean, these plans get re-looked at every 2 to 3 years. So like Hannah said, these plans were in effect, these are not new plans. The thing is that every 2 or 3 years they re-look at them. And because of 2017 wildfires, they've re-looked at them and said that this entire north of Portimao region is all unbuildable now. So it's very, very difficult to find any planning here. Because of this, the vice president at the Camara has talked to us, and they're not entirely happy with how the plans are. They want to re-look at them in 2 or 3 years again, because it's just going to mean that nothing gets done here. All the land here goes to ruin, and it's even more of a wildfire risk if no one's on the land managing it. So it could have, negative effects, unintended consequences, so to say.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, thanks. It's an amazing story. I just hope it all pans out. I'm sure it will, because you're both incredibly resilient people and you've done serious amounts of homework on this one. So I'm sure you're going to come through.
We're still really committed to the idea. We still think it's going to be fantastic when it does come about. It just may take a little bit longer. And, maybe it's not on this land. If something else is around there, if we see something else where we can do this a little bit sooner, then maybe we jump the gun. But we really love this land here at the moment. We feel really connected to it. We've made some great friends in the neighbourhood, and it'd be a real shame to have to leave.
Yeah, so we'll definitely fight a little bit longer for it and see where it takes us.
Fight the good fight. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Well, good luck, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
I'm back in Selbraj now. I'm back at home base, and it was great to meet Hannah and Jack. They really are lovely people. Very dedicated, organised, and I'm sure they're going to do well. I know that they've had a few hiccups, but I learned a lot from that, and I hope you did too. So obviously bear in mind fire restrictions. That's one thing that the lawyers hadn't told me about as well, so it's important to pick up that extra new bit of information. Now, there's a guy who hails from Cape Town, where I actually come from myself in South Africa, and he's moved via England. He moved over to England, and then he'll tell you, but he's now living in the middle of Portugal, and he bought a farm. And I asked him to tell us a little bit about his experiences, and he's got a great YouTube channel as well. It's called OK Portugal, and you can see it down here. So go and check him out, follow him. He's got a great story. He's got tons of videos up, and he's always interesting to follow and see what he does and what he's up to. But here's Ken from OK Portugal.
Hey guys, it's Ken here from OK Portugal. Nick, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's an absolute pleasure to chat with you guys. For those of you that don't know who we are, my name's Ken, and my girlfriend Gina and I moved to Portugal about almost 2 years ago. We've lived on this beautiful farm for the last 14 months, and we have a YouTube channel that basically documents our move from England, where I lived for 17 years. You can probably tell from my accent that I have a very similar accent to Nick. We're both from South Africa, and I lived in England for 17 years. Then we just decided, you know what, there's such amazing properties out here in Portugal. The prices are fantastic. And we decided to sell everything that we had, sell our house, quit our jobs, buy ourselves a camper van and just drive across here. We didn't really have a plan. We kind of knew that we would have some money in the bank account from selling the house, and we were just going to take our times until we found the perfect place. So we bought ourselves a beautiful 3.5 hectare farm between Castelo Branco and Fundão. And over the last 2 years, while we've been looking at different properties, we've been filming them and putting them on our channel. We've been speaking with lots of different estate agents, and almost daily I'm looking at different property ads and basically just looking at the property market around central Portugal. So when you first start your property search, you're going to notice that in central Portugal a lot of the properties are really, really cheap. And the reason for that is there's a lot of people that have left the countryside and they've abandoned a lot of these beautiful farms, and they've gone in search of the big city and making money out there. A lot of the kids have gone to university and they just haven't come back again. And the people that owned and worked these farms in the past have obviously reached an age now where they can't work anymore. And so a lot of these things are abandoned. So you're going to find a lot of these properties in central Portugal are going to be quite cheap. And some of them, there's a reason for that. In order to live on a piece of land out here in Portugal, you need to have a building that has a habitation license. It basically has to be a habitable building that's licensed for use to live inside. Now on our farm, the building over here with the terracotta roof, that's our licensed habitation. So that's a 2-bedroom house. It's built on a plot which is designated as urban. The rest of this plot is all designated as agricultural. and so you can't build anything on there apart from agricultural support buildings. And those are things like, like a garage to park your tractor in, or a barn or something like that. So you're not going to be able to build anything else on these properties unless it has an urban plot, in which case you can build any house you want as long as it fits within inside the plot. Or alternatively, if the property has a ruin, and there's a few things you have to watch out for with these ruins, because a lot of these farms have got these old dilapidated ruins. They're made out of stone, they've all collapsed, and some of them you can live inside and some of them you can't. Now, if you can find an agricultural property or a rural property that's got one of these ruins on it, if it's pre-1951 and it's been registered with the local town hall that it's pre-1951 and that this ruin exists in their database, then it's exempt from needing a habitation license. You can basically live there and you can renovate this property to within its own footprint. So if you're looking at a 5 meter by 5 meter ruin, all of the granite's collapsed and everything, you can renovate that back up to 25 square meters. You can't go outside of that. I'm not sure whether or not you can go upwards of that, but you basically don't need planning permission to build within its own footprint. And that's really useful. It's also worth bearing in mind that you buy something that has a footprint that's big enough for you to build your dream house. So make sure that you buy yourself a piece of land that has a ruin that's registered pre-1951. If it's not, I believe you can get a property lawyer to help you with that registration process. Some unscrupulous real estate agents might take you to a property and say, no, you don't need a habitation license because this ruin is fine, and you might buy something that can't actually be registered, for instance, or maybe it's registered only as an agricultural support building, in which case you're not actually able to live in there and you won't be able to get those rights. Check things yourself. Don't just take what the estate agents are saying. Don't just, listen to what they're saying and go ahead and buy a place that you potentially can never live on. Go to your local Junta de Freguesia, which is basically the local town hall. Speak to the secretary or the president and just say, is it possible for me to do this? Get yourself a property lawyer perhaps to look at things like that. For us, with our purchase, we just used a notary. It was pure and simple. All of the documentation was in place, and we just had to get everything signed over. So if you're going to be doing things slightly more complicated, then definitely get yourself a property lawyer and definitely go to your local town halls. Speak with the people there, show them the property you want to buy, tell them what you're interested in doing, and they will be able to give you the best advice. So I hope that's been helpful to you guys, and it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Nick, once again, thanks for having me on here. I can't wait till we can come down to the Algarve and we can meet up. And from not so sunny central Portugal, because we are in winter right now, goodbye from this beautiful place. Goodbye from me, Ken, and I hope to see you guys soon. All the best. Ciao.
Oh, that's magic. Thanks, Ken. It was really cool of you to do that video. And there's quite some commitment there. So it was starting to rain. So well done. But it was awesome. Really interesting information as well. And guys, I hope that you've learned a lot in this video. There's a lot to take in, but there's a lot to do in this thing. It sounds really romantic. Oh, wow, we're going to buy a little farm in Portugal or a ruin in Portugal and renovate it, and it's lovely. And it is romantic and it can be done. But just make sure you do it. All these caveats that our guys here, Ken and Hannah and Jack, have mentioned, and also my lawyer, Marcia, have mentioned. Please just bear those in mind and be advised when you go into something like this. So, there's tons of information in the description. I've put a lot of stuff down there, things to help you. You can get a NIF, you can get all kinds of stuff. You can get, practice Portuguese. You can get in a consultation with me. You can do all kinds of stuff. So look in the description if you need any more information. Most of all, the easiest thing to do is just sign up to my email list on algarveaddicts.com, and I'll send you a free relocation sheet. So once again, thanks so much for watching and being a part of this community. It's thrilling, man. It's crazy. It's growing so quickly and I'm loving it. Really enjoying having you guys on and chatting to you all in the comments and stuff. So leave a comment as well. Thanks a lot. See you later.